Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Today I would like to take the chance and talk to you a little bit about blended learning and what that is and how we can actually incorporate it into our classrooms. So first I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm using right now because these are great tools and resources that you can use in your classroom to incorporate blended learning. So first I'm using Screencast-Matic to record this video, and I am using Blended Space to actually make a lesson. So I'll talk a little bit more about these features and these resources and what they can do. But first I really want to nail down what blended learning is, and then we'll take the steps of how we can incorporate it into our classroom. So I'm going to go ahead here and play a video. First video here is just about what blended learning is, and then we'll go into the actual models that blended learning has. So they hit play. Again, this is using blended space. So what this is doing is, what you're looking at is from a student standpoint. They would go through this lesson. I could even down here start a discussion with them, but it's all at their own pace, and I can even add in PDF files where they have to do worksheets. I can add in quizzes and all this other kind of fun stuff. So I'll hit play and watch. I'm going to add a little discussion down here.
I can say that the things I've been doing the last 2 years have really made a difference because my kids have scored the highest in the state on the standardized tests. So what we're doing here is working, and it's helping them be successful.
We define blended learning as the combination of digital content and activity with face-to-face content and activity. It sounds easy to blend, but it looks very different in every classroom. So if a teacher is using something that works really well in a face-to-face situation, they should continue to do that because it works well. If they can find something else that works better, is more efficient or more effective that's digital, then that would be implemented.
What I have online could be completely different than what the biology teacher has online or what the physical education teacher has online. It just depends what you need those kids to have in order to understand what they need to learn.
Okay, go ahead and get the laptops. And actually, anybody that's in a small group, come over here. I need you to get an iPad.
Why I wanted to go to a more blended environment was so that I could figure out a way to differentiate instruction within the biology classroom, and I wanted a way to be able to work with students in small groups while other students are still engaged in content learning.
There are 3 activities. One's a sorting sentence activity, one is an online interactivity, and one is small group that's going to be working with me. Okay, slide to the apps and open up EduCreations. So we're going to fill in this chart because this is going to get us practicing base pairing between DNA, RNA, and reading our codon chart. Okay, so what goes with G? C. So I'm going to put G and C together like this, right?
I've probably learned more today just by doing this than I have the whole week that we've been doing this.
We looked at the research about blended learning, we defined it, and then we had to figure out what would it look like in my class. And so that's when I went, well, I actually want to use it more as a tool for the kids for like supplemental materials.
Top or the bottom of the cylinder.
There's always practice problems, or you can go listen to somebody talk about the topic. But the kids started to say that we don't want to listen to somebody else, we want to listen to you. And we need your help. And we want to hear your voice. So I started to go, okay, well, how can I do that? And so our technology person said, have you seen this app on the iPad? And me not knowing anything about technology went, I have no idea what you're talking about. Teach me. So we went through a process of me learning how to use the Show Me app. And then I started making podcasts. And it gives me a chance to be in their homes, wherever they are, 24/7. It's virtual Wellers, what we call it.
And that will correspond to 6 to 9, like it has in the rest of the problems.
The podcast like helps so much. It's like as if she's actually there, and she just goes through it again, and you can like finally understand it.
I see them, they'll plug in, I look over and they have it on their phones, they have it on their tablets, they have it on computers. They do podcasts for me during class time. I will have specific problems I want to see, just like, do they understand the basics of what we talked about today?
40. C plus divide 40 to get C by itself. And C
is equal to 45.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For me, classroom time, direct instruction, investigations, discovery, that's all still part of teaching. It's not all online. A lot of the face-to-face stuff is still the most important thing to me. The online tools are there to help make understanding even better, even more rich of an experience for the kids.
We really wanted the focus to be on the teaching and learning part and on the digital tool as a secondary thing.
Kids don't always get it the first time, or the second time, or the third time, and this allows different ways for those kids to get it. The pass rate for my kids the first year was 75%, and the second year was 93%. The state average is somewhere around 60%, so something's working for these kids.
Okay, so that was a video just introducing blended learning to us, and I gotta say I love the idea of the Show Me app. I love the idea of having students create their own podcasts. Those are definitely two things that I would love to incorporate into my classroom. Not things I've tried yet, but the Show Me app I have downloaded, and it's a great resource and tool. As it's always been said to me, 10% of what I lecture is what students will intake, but 90% of what students teach others is what they intake. So with that podcast, they're teaching students, they're being with the partner, they're being interactive with the learning, they're going to intake 90% of that, which is a lot more than the 10% that would happen if I was just lecturing at them. So that's what blended learning is. It's when you take the online learning component with the regular direct or face-to-face instruction and you combine it. So as you can see on the screen right now, it is the blended learning model. What makes blended learning? So the top two things are the online learning, again, which is kind of when students learn strictly online. It's all done on the computer. You really don't have to go to school. It could be something like an online homeschooling. And then you take the brick and mortar, which is a traditional school that is in a building instead of on the internet. So the face-to-face. You combine them, you get blended learning. Within blended learning, there are 4 different models. My main focus today is going to be the rotation model, simply because it is the easiest to implement into a classroom that has little technology resources, is set up in a traditional manner, and, oh, what happened here? Sorry. And might not be the easiest, or rotation model is just the easiest thing for teachers to do. So within the rotation model, you have station rotation, lab rotation, flipped classroom, and individual rotation. You also have a flex model, a la carte model, and an enriched virtual model. So we're going to talk about all 4 of these, but we're going to kind of focus on the rotation model and what we can actually do to implement those things into our classroom. So I'm going to move on. This video is going to be the station rotation, so it is the first thing here underneath the rotation model. I really love this video. It'll probably be our last video that we're going to watch. It's about 5 minutes here, but she does a great job of explaining station rotation, how she sets it up in her English classroom, and what her students do with the technology. So go ahead, pay attention to the technology and again how you can incorporate this into your classroom.
Alright, You guys are already in the station rotation groups you're going to stay in today. So this will be station rotation 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each of the rotations has, I think there's a lot of reasons why it's effective. I know for me, there's really clear reasons why I do it. You know, a lot of teachers are dealing with large class sizes, and it can be really challenging to personalize instruction, to differentiate instruction for really varied skill levels. So for me, it creates these smaller learning communities within the larger class and creates more opportunities for me to work with small groups of students. There can be multiple stations that don't require technology or have technology. They're completely offline stations, and that flexibility makes it really attractive for a lot of teachers, particularly those of us who don't have a ton of technology at our disposal. And so what I tell teachers when I'm training is go horizontal with your agenda, which means lots of teachers plan their lessons with a linear agenda. We're going to do this first, and then this, and then that, and they might have 3 or 4 tasks on the agenda for that day. And so my idea is if you kind of go horizontal and you just take each of those tasks and make it a station, it's an easier way to kind of go from a traditional lesson plan to a blended lesson plan. So if we're going to read an article, if we're going to have a discussion, if we're going to go over grammar, why not have a small student-led discussion group, a small group reading and doing annotating, and then one group over here doing the online grammar piece. So we're still getting through everything that would be in a traditional agenda, but it's happening in stations as opposed to us walking through it kind of lockstep as a class. And when you move through a lesson lockstep as a class, there are fewer opportunities for kids to get support, ask questions, and so stations just create that kind of natural environment where kids can collaborate, they can problem solve together and ask each other questions. So for Station 1, they were doing a blast on audience, purpose, and style, and they are working on an argumentative piece for me about a topic of their choice, some debatable issue, and so they had a better understanding of different styles and different purposes. And then after that, I had them thinking about, after they blasted out their response to the question, I had them thinking about the argumentative piece they're writing for me and start thinking, who's your audience? What style is appropriate for this audience? They're going to be writing a vignette because they're reading House on Mango Street. It's just a series of vignettes, and that's been really challenging for them because it's an unconventional structure or style of writing. And so I wanted them to know what a vignette was, and I was checking out the blasts at Support Writing, and I thought, okay, if they're going to do anything well, I want them to do the description, the sensory-rich details and stuff in their vignettes, so that's why I chose that one. The blasts are just really nice, fun, kind of bite-sized pieces of information, and so when we're tackling specific pieces of writing, if there's a blast on it where I can just kind of expose them to some quick information, get them thinking about it, it's an ideal way to introduce a topic before I'm actually asking them to write to a specific audience or for a specific purpose or using a particular style.
I like that it is more interactive. You get to see what your peers put in as well, and then you get to review it and have other people review your work as well. And that you're using technology and it is not using paper and writing. It's actually having a screen in front of you, which is kind of like a safe haven for us sometimes.
This group over here is going to be watching a grammar video on commas and compound sentences. If you guys have the split earbuds, that would work better than having the volume. I went right into the grammar workbook that's part of StudySync and found a lesson on commas and compound sentences because I had done a pre-assessment and that was an area they were really weak on. And then after their first couple pieces of writing, it's definitely an area that they needed practice on. So then I went into the grammar workbook and reviewed the explanation of commas and compound sentences, created my video from there, so it was kind of, they could watch it at their own pace and pause it, and then I literally used one of the practice sheets and just made copies of it so that they could apply what they had seen in the video.
The word "and" is a coordinating conjunction, and coordinating conjunctions are like the glue that hold two main clauses together when you're building a compound sentence.
So a lot of teachers, when they hear about the flipped classroom, they like the idea of it, the whole purpose of it, but they're concerned that kids don't have access to technology outside the classroom. And so one way to kind of combat that, if you would like to allow students to pace their own learning, whether watching a video or reading something, is to use one of the stations, the online learning stations, to allow them to watch a video.
Okay, great. So that is station rotation.
All right.
And so we're going to take a look at how we could actually incorporate this into our classroom, and the things that we could do. So she did a really nice job with her English room. She had 2 stations that had technology incorporated into them, and then 2 that were just writing things down and actually tuning out the electronics. So this isn't something that has to happen every day. It could happen maybe 3 times a week, 2 times a week, once a week, maybe every Friday. However you think you could put this into your traditional classroom setting. So I'm a math teacher, and I'm going to look at this from a math teacher standpoint, because sometimes math is one of the hardest things to actually try to figure out how to incorporate these things into this technology. So for a math teacher, Station 1 could be either GeoGebra or Braining Camp. So if you haven't heard of these, you're a math teacher, if you're not a math teacher, they're online apps where students can use digital manipulatives to prove the Pythagorean theorem per se, or any kind of angle theorem, any of those types of theorems. These 2 apps allow students to use manipulatives and prove them themselves. Station 2 could be an individual practice problem. So this could be a station where students would work on practice problems that we give them, and then they would have a resource from the teacher recorded podcast of the teacher reviewing how to solve these problems on maybe the Chromebook, 1 Chromebook or 2 Chromebooks per station. Students are individually working on these problems, but if they need a reference, that podcast of the teacher explaining the problem is there for them. Station 3, incorporating from the first video, could be a student podcast. So using that Show Me app, students with partners would make their own podcasts and explain how to solve the right triangle. And then Station 4 would just be a review. So this would depend on what the students needed. Maybe they needed a basic algebra review or more practice from the last section. So this could be either completely withdrawn from technology, just some basic review problems with the teacher, or this could even be like how the teacher in the last video had her own video recorded lesson, and the station review could be one of those. So lots of ways to incorporate station rotations. It's for every teacher out there for every subject. So moving on, we're going to talk about the next rotation model, which is a lab rotation. So again, this is a rotation model. It is in the school, it's on site, but it takes multiple classrooms. So where you saw with the station rotation, the rotation was happening within just one room. Well, with a lab rotation, this would be happening with multiple classrooms. So I can see this more so in an elementary school where teachers, all 5th grade teachers, can rotate between multiple classrooms, and then there's one learning lab. So you would have, so if you look here, you have the direct instruction for math and science, direct instruction, literacy, and social studies, direct instruction, literacy, and social studies again. But then this right here would be a learning lab for the students. So the students are rotating between these 4 classrooms where they're getting their face-to-face in the blue, but then with the lab, they're getting their technology use. So again, I could see this with working with elementary school teachers where you have all the 5th grade teachers for one day decide to do a rotation in this model. Looking at the lab rotation model, some of the benefits is that this model solves the problems of large class sizes by allowing teachers to work with smaller groups of students. But the challenges is, at first a school may experience difficulties while setting up a new learning model. Teachers will have to change their teaching methods significantly, like recognizing activities and curriculum. So this is more so if we're trying to implement this model in, I would say, a higher level, high school, middle school. Maybe middle school would be a little bit easier, but high school there would be some extreme changes for teachers and administration and how the whole school is set up. Another challenge is to choose the software and find or create your own learning content. So finding the right software that's going to work for teachers and students, that has assessment options, result tracking, the cost, that can be a lot of work and a lot of research. So it's definitely something to look into and see how you can best fit the lab rotation for you. So again, lab rotation is going from direct instruction to online learning lab in different classrooms. So you're moving through different classrooms to get the direct instruction and then the learning lab. Okay, so the next model that we're going to look at underneath the rotation model is an individual rotation. So what we're going to look at here is a school that has taken on this individual rotation model and hasn't made it just a school thing. So it's not like an individual teacher classroom, they're doing an individual rotation. This is a whole school doing it. So it's on an extreme level, but they do a very, very nice job with their individual rotation model. So I'll play this video here, watch what they're doing, listen to what the teachers have to say and what the students have to say about this model.
What are the elements that make up a great school? The rarest element, of course, is results. In Yuma County, Arizona, the average school has about 57% of their students performing at proficient or above. In Arizona as a whole, it's about 65%. But here in Yuma, there's a school doing things a little bit differently, and their results speak for themselves.
Yuma's educational challenges were not a lot different than the entire state or many states in the United States. Students all across the country have been losing motivation to learn. What we became frustrated with is that the system of education that we had really was more system-centric than it was student-centric.
So what happens if you flip that model around? What happens if you design a school from the ground up around the student instead of the bureaucracy?
Our students need a new approach to education. Carpe Diem has that new approach. As you enter Carpe Diem, one of the first things you'll notice is that it doesn't look like other schools.
It's completely different than a normal school. I would have to say it's very advanced.
The Carpe Diem was very different, but in a good way. Carpe Diem Collegiate High School is a blended learning school that blends the best of face-to-face instruction, technology, and extended learning opportunities in order to boost student achievement. Kids today are wired in every way. They have their cell phones, their iPods, their iPad, and unfortunately, when they leave school, they power up. When they come back, they power down. So what we wanted to do was leverage that experience, that knowledge, that savviness about technology, and bring it into the classroom to where they would also be excited about using their skills to learn the things that we thought were important for them to learn.
Differences at Carpe Diem are both dramatic and subtle, but everything, from the way they interact with teachers to the way they take attendance, has been designed with the goal of making education a more positive, enriching, and empowering experience for students. At the heart of Carpe Diem is the Learning Center, where students perform most of their work following an individualized online curriculum.
Inside the Learning Center are 300 cubicles that every student is assigned to throughout the entire year.
When they come in, they see a building that's setting them up with high expectations to work. All that leads them to a more professional idea of what education is like in their heads.
Students divide their day between independent work at their computer and hands-on workshops with teachers.
I love working on a computer. I love computers and I work with them as much as I can, so, it's great.
That computer actually can adapt and prescribes deeper level learning, more enriched learning, as well as more rigor as they move forward. But once they have the concept down from the computer, then they transition into what we call a workshop or a classroom, in which a teacher takes that concept and makes it more relevant by giving them projects, learning activities that help them to understand it in unique ways.
So you get on the computer and you do your work, but then also at the same time you can go to workshops and classes to get extra help.
And classroom time isn't about lectures. It's about interaction and discussion with students in order to provide them with context and critical thinking skills.
I think here we have better teacher-student relationships. The model itself allows for students to use the computer as well as the teacher-student interaction to get the best out of their educational experience.
Teachers then get to do the exciting part of it, and that is make it applicable and relevant to their lives. Nobody learns the same subject area at the same pace or the same abilities. Well, at Carpe Diem, we can customize the course. We can start them anywhere they happen to be. and move them along at their pace. We believe that relationships are extremely important. So we try to desystematize everything to where we can focus on the kids. Find out what do they need, and if they need it, we try to provide it right here.
Here, the teachers know where you're at exactly, so if you have a problem, they'll talk to you about it, and they help you with it.
Assessment occurs literally every day, and it's all being aggregated, if you would, into the computer system. The teachers go through the data on a daily basis to see what needs to be changed or modified, who needs additional assistance. And once those students are identified, they can literally go in, talk to the student, find out what the concept was that they had a problem with, and then do some immediate intervention. And maybe it's just a very quick thing that happens, maybe 2 minutes, but the student gets the help they need.
For teachers, the Carpe Diem model means they're able to spend more one-on-one time with individual students. And over the course of a student's education at Carpe Diem, they'll interact with the same teacher for each core concept area every year, which means greater continuity and stronger relationships.
My math teacher, it's been my same math teacher since 6th grade, and over that time he's learned my disadvantages or advantages, so he knows what I have trouble with or what I don't. So over the years he's helped me with problems that I've had.
I think that is the most beautiful part about my job, because I get to see every one of them, and I get to see the growth. I actually can measure how I'm the one that's giving them that information in 6th grade that they must have in 7th, 8th to build upon to go to high school.
I think when they come in and they see we have high expectations as teachers, they want to excel for us. And when we have these special relationships, they want to work really hard to get the right answers and to do as well as they possibly could.
The teachers get to know the context of the students' lives, get to know their interests, get to know the goals, the careers, their aspirations. Because of that, everything that the teacher does can be related to that student.
If I had to describe the school to someone who never went here, never knew about it, I would describe it as a family. I went through like a rough patch last year, and they didn't just like look at me bad. They actually pulled me in. They're like, "What's wrong here?" And I told them what was wrong, and they're like, "We're gonna fix this." And I just got my act together. I felt like I had responsibility and like I have something to look forward to.
Carpe Diem's mission statement is to educate with knowledge, to empower with character, and to equip for life. One of the things we want to do is to make sure our students are ready with the knowledge they need for the life they're going to live, that they're empowered with the character they need as well as the skills necessary to be successful in the 21st century.
As a school, Carpe Diem probably doesn't look like anything else you've seen before. But in terms of demographics, it's almost identical to a typical public school in Arizona, which makes the accomplishments of these students all the more impressive.
We've led the state in student growth for 2 consecutive years. We also have been consistently in the top 10% in the state when it comes to scale scores. We've been number 1 in our county every year for the last 4 years.
Carpe Diem has been recognized on a national level for its innovative approach.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. Just to recap, the individual rotation obviously looks like they're doing something right. These students are growing. They're seeing benefits from this individual rotation model. The one thing that I thought was really, really cool about the individual rotation model and how this school set it up was that the students had the same core teachers from 6th to 12th grade. And to me, I think that's incredible because what they said, you build those relationships, you understand where a student might struggle and where they're going to need help before they're even going to need the help. So to implement this individual rotation model, it's definitely on a more school-wide, should be more school-wide, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen in an individual classroom. It'll just take some creativity and some thinking. So some of the advantages of this individual rotation model is students are able to interact with teachers on a more one-to-one basis. Students have the same teachers throughout their school career. Students are able to work at their own learning speed, whatever suits them best. So those are all things that are helping this Carpe Diem school reach the results that they're seeing. Because as we all know, relationships, one-on-one, learning at your own speed are crucial for students. So some of the disadvantages, though, would be setting up the model in a traditional school. It can be challenging. It's going to be a big change. It's going to be hard for teachers, staff, and students to all understand and do. but it's totally possible, as you can see with this school here. Alright, moving on is a flipped classroom. We're going to watch a quick short video here in a flipped classroom. I feel like this is something that most people are familiar with. I feel like it's one of the most talked about blended learning. So we won't spend a whole lot of time on it. There are advantages and disadvantages to the flipped classroom. We'll talk about those here after this video.
This is a classroom. The teacher stands at the front, and the students watch and listen. You'll recognize this because it's probably how you were taught, and how your parents were taught before you. But there are a lot of problems with this approach to teaching. You see, not all students learn at the same speed, so some get left behind. And while some students learn better by listening, others may learn better by doing. This means that teachers can't always do the best job they can. But there is another way. The flipped classroom addresses these problems and makes learning more personal. First, the teacher makes a video that delivers the content they'd usually teach in class. Then they share it online with students who can watch it before the next lesson. This leaves the teacher free to spend class time leading activities that help students apply the knowledge. Students can rewind and rewatch a video as many times as they like and come back to class with questions for the teacher. So keeping up with the class is no longer an issue. Students can access the video at any time using mobile devices, giving them the ability to learn more independently. Instead of sitting and listening, students can spend class time applying knowledge in more practical ways. And teachers are free to spend their time working with students and giving them individual support and attention.
Okay, so that's a brief overview of the flipped classroom. Obviously, the advantages of this is students get to work on the homework at school, they get that one-on-one help that they need, and the teacher has more time to cover the material and answer student questions. The disadvantages of this is if you're in an area where you feel that there's a lack of internet access at home, that's going to be an obstacle course you're going to have to overcome with the flipped classroom. Motivating students to take their learning into their own hands. You're going to have students that aren't going to want to go home, aren't going to want to watch these videos, and do the work outside of school and then have to do more work in school as well. And then sometimes students do not learn well from videos. I've had this experience where I made a video, I sent it out to the students, they watched the video, and they did the work that way. And I noticed a lot of students struggled from that. They didn't want to watch the video, or whatever it may have been, it was confusing to them. So sometimes with videos, you can run into those kind of problems. I like the flipped classroom model. I think it's a really awesome way to do the blended learning. I just do fear the lack of internet access at home. That is one of my biggest things that I don't want to put a student behind because they don't have internet. But doesn't mean you can't do it, and doesn't mean that you can't find another way to implement this. Okay, so there are 3 remaining models that I have not talked about yet. Those are the Flex, a la carte, and Enrich virtual models. I'll show you a website that will give you more information on these. The reason I'm not going to be talking about them as much is because they are a full school. You'd have to change the entire school setup. It's more online than face-to-face kind of learning. So the Flex model focuses on students having a flex schedule to go to classes, kind of like the individual rotation where they have a learning center. And then classrooms are dedicated for helping students. But the students are free to go to class whichever they prefer. The a la carte and Enrich virtual models focus more on online learning at home and then coming to school like twice a week. In a traditional school setting, this would not be ideal considering students are not required to come to school every day. So I'm from Harrison Community Schools, and the a la carte and Enrich virtual models are a lot like how we have our alternative ed program set up, where it's all online. The students come to school and they just sit there and they do their online stuff. They can do it at home. Even with our all ed program, though, we still require the students to come to school every day. So that would be a huge change, is the students only have to come twice a week to school to do these kind of models. So the website that I'm talking about here is, once it loads, the Blended Learning Universe, so BLU. You can look this up. It has every one of the models that we just talked about and looked at, and it goes more in depth. You can watch the videos on it, you can watch it in action, and see how you can actually incorporate these kind of blended learning models into your own classroom. So again, what I'm using here, what you're seeing, is the blended space, and if you were an actual student going onto my blended space, looking at this lesson, you would be able to roam around on this website, see what it has to do, learn what I'm asking you to learn, and participate in this website. Just like in the previous ones, you would be able to participate in clicking the arrows. You're participating in determining when you want to stop the videos and when you want to continue on, and all that good stuff. So the last thing on the blended space is I included a quiz on here because this is something that I can do with it. Again, I will be able to get the results right away from the students as soon as they're done answering it, and I can see what did they hit on, what did they miss on, what should I go over, and it's really just amazing that this can all come to me as fast as a click of a button. So for the first question we have, which model do students stay in the classroom and rotate between stations? So this one was the station rotation. Students are staying in the classroom and they rotate between the stations in that classroom. And then what is the definition of blended learning? Well, it's a balance between online learning and face-to-face learning. So then you would submit it. It tells me that I got it right, and we're done. So thank you again for tuning into this presentation about blended learning. I hope you took something away from it and you're thinking about how can I incorporate this into my classroom to get students engaged. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Madison Wise, and you have a nice one.